Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. An investment said to have an 80% chance of success sounds far more attractive than one with a 20% chance of failure. The mind can easily recognize that they are the same. The mind can't easily recognize that they are the same. Daniel Kahneman, our guest today, a student of Mr. Kahneman, a teacher of many around the subject of human behavior, uh, mass psychology, business, various mediums, the TikToks and the Facebooks and all that stuff that we take for granted. But a good friend of the Culture Matters podcast, good friend of mine, episode 220. If you haven't listened to that episode and you're listening to this, when this is over, go over there. It'll be a totally different conversation between myself and our guest, one of the top in their field. Maxwell Finn is back to talk all things business, life, human psychology, whatever the heck that quote meant. Thanks for coming back to the Culture Matters podcast, my friend.
Of course, man. I'm so happy to be here. I always love our conversations. There's um starting to do more of I stopped doing podcasts for a while because they got so boring and repetitive. But this year I wanted part of a role with our new partnership at Unicorn. We brought Will on as a partner to really operate and like really putting all of us in our genius and our zones. It's like me now getting back and doing more speaking and podcasts and stuff. But I will say like 90% of podcasts, maybe more than that I do are boring, awful, and repetitive garbage. And our conversations are the opposite of that. So like if I could just do like a few podcasts, just like a ton of them, that'd be way better for me. So maybe we'll have, episode 10, episode 20, episode 30 over the next decade. That'd be great. Um, but it's a great quote. I'm glad you opened with that. That's one of my favorites. That's one of my favorite
Really?
studies that they've done because it says so much about the human mind. And as a marketer, the ability to present information and as a salesperson, as a business person, as a human being trying to persuade somebody in a relationship, in a friendship, right? Like understanding how illogical people are is so important. Like Roy Sutherland talks about this all the time, who's another guy like legend in our space that I read and study and follow religiously. Like Kahneman, who recently passed, is like it's going back to what you say the same thing, but you said it differently. And because you said it differently, people are going to hear it differently. And so, even another example they give is doctors, right? If you're presenting a patient with options for treatment to cancer or surgeries, uh, you're not going to go in and say this has an 80% chance of killing you. You're going to say this has a 20% success rate. This has you're going to focus on the positive because if you focus on the negative, it's going to terrify people. They're just going to hone on that, right? Even though it says the same thing, it's got, if it has a 20% success rate, it means there's an 80% chance it could kill you, right? You're going to die. And nobody wants to think about that. And that's one example of how information is presented, but
Hmm.
there's so many examples that Kahneman and um, Tversky, who was a partner, and so many other amazing psychologists have done over the decades of like, uh, you know, even just how much I need to win to enter a bet. Like if I want to bet on something, uh, people are loss averse. So I need to, if I want to place $100 bet, on average, people need $200 placed to bet. Like there's so many amazing, these beautiful things about how the brain works and why people make decisions and how you need to present information for somebody to make a decision or not make a decision. And for me, it's like that's so fascinating. I know a lot of people talk about the medium, TikTok, Facebook, there's a lot of focus on that. And I think we spoke about this briefly on our last episode
Yeah.
of the channel. But for me, it's like it's easy to sell that to the market. You're a TikTok ad guy or Facebook ad guy, or you're this person, you're an AI person. But the real thing people should be focusing on, especially if you're getting into this space, you want to be a marketer, you want to be a salesperson, you want to be an entrepreneur, is how people think, like how the brain works. Because you can understand how the brain works and doesn't work. Because the reality is like for how amazing our brains are, and they are an amazing thing. It's why it make what makes us human beings is our brain. It's also pretty inept at a lot of stuff. Like it's pretty easy to override, right? It takes a very, very, very long time because we're biological entities for it to evolve and adapt. And what's happening technologically and societally is moving faster. And platforms like Facebook and social media companies know that and they can exploit that because they know our brains are still operating like we're in the plains of Africa with fire trying to survive from lions. And that's a lot of how our brain still operates in that world,
Mm.
but we don't need that anymore, right? So, but like our brains haven't evolved fast enough yet. And so this whole thing, it's a great quote because it opens up that box of just how powerful knowing that is. Like if you can master that, it's almost like a cheat code to life. Like the people that really know that can do anything, can get away with anything, can persuade people to do anything. It's
Mm.
a pretty remarkable skill to have.
I have a question on this. So let's say when new technology, like the new platform, comes about,
Mhm.
there there's how do I phrase this? Would you say that there's a period of time in the early adoption where the mass consumer has yet to really figure out how even they're relating to it? And in that window, there's a small percentage of the population that knows people well enough, like that they can capitalize on that. I'm trying to articulate, like if
I know what you're saying.
there's a new, okay, yeah. Can you retort to
Yeah.
that? Or unpack that a
Yeah.
little bit? Like,
I mean, that's why there's always going to be people that are able to grow audiences faster, that are able to build businesses faster, because they're able to identify a new up and coming medium, tool, channel, platform, whatever it is, understand how it's working and why it's working, and then create content or a strategy or basically utilize it to the best of that ability
like how it's
before people start
shaping us
recognizing it. Yes. So
as we
like
shape it.
yeah, I mean, so like, the people that understood getting on TikTok super early understood that this platform is built on dopamine and short bits of it, understood that the best way to fully capitalize on the short form medium that is so fueled by constant dopamine hits is to never finish stories, is to never give a full picture, is to like they
Wow.
under like if you look at YouTube, YouTube is a totally different platform for content where people are going to YouTube to to see full stories. People go to the movie theaters, go to Netflix to watch a full story, to see a narrative from start to finish and everything that comes in between. And the way you create content for that medium, if you are a director of a big movie or TV show, is you need to understand, okay, how do I create a really good arc? How do I create a good twist? How do I keep people constantly engaged throughout, but then build intensity, but not lose them? Like, how do I do all these things? That's a great content creator and a great person that knows how to use that platform. But like a TikTok, if you know early on, like this is how it's working and this is what they want in terms of like how, like if you can align your way of thinking with the people that are building the tool and have this, like this is their incentives, they're incentivizing content creators who are able to further their goal, which is retaining attention in the format they want to retain it in. If you can do that, you get rewarded heavily for both being an early adopter, So anytime you're an early adopter somewhere, you're gonna get mass reach, and all the social media platforms have done this throughout the history of social
Mm.
media. Is content creators that get on first get disproportionate reach, so you're triggering that dopamine where they're getting wins, wins, wins. It seems easy, and then as mass they tell everyone about it, mass adoption hits, and they pull back the reach, and they introduce the ad platform, make it pay to play, and so it's all a game. And so I guess the to your question, I don't know if I'm answering this, is like if you know the game and you understand the business model behind it and the developing, like the technology behind it and how they're building it and how they want people to consume content, and you can create for that with that same mindset, it becomes pretty easy. Now it's easier said than done. You need to be able to like into it because
It
unless you know
seems
something about
like
the
this is what I
platform.
want you to expand on. And you are answering it. There seems like there's a constant interplay between consumers behaving relative to new mediums and marketers gathering data and trying to retell that and try to move consumers in a new way. So, for example, after something for a while, this method works, dot, dot, dot.
Yep.
And then the consumers somehow become more aware,
Yep.
and then their behavior morphs and the opportunity's gone, but there's a new opportunity and there's a new way to speak. So is that, am I kind of grasping
Yeah.
it,
I
or
mean, that's like, and this has
it's a
happened.
never ending evolution
It's
of
a
this?
never ending game of marketers figure out something before consumers know they're being marketed to. And this goes back so far. I mean, before this, but like an example is like soap operas, right? So soap operas initially started on radio, but then they really became big on TV. And it sounds pretty obvious in hindsight, but most people don't actually know that the reason they're called soap operas is because the big soap companies essentially created these TV shows as a means to sell household products to stay-at-home moms who
No
didn't have
way.
anything to do during the day. So all the big conglomerates of the time were saying, "Well, we have all the moms that stay at home during the day, and they make a lot of the purchasing decisions in the household. And how do we reach them? Well, they had this new medium TV, and it started as radio initially, but then this TV came into the house, and they're sitting at home, they're doing chores during the day and all this stuff, and it was a different time back then. So okay, we're going to create these really great episodic TV shows, and we're not going to make it clear. It's not going to be like ad. It's like this show is brought to you by this brand, but like throughout the show, they're going to be using this product placement throughout it, and they're going to see this new toaster oven, this new vacuum, this new thing every single episode. And they figured out how to have soap operas really figure out the cliffhanger and how to
Mm.
never really finish a story so you came back for the next episode. They really were great at that. Um, like marketers are so good at those things. So even like TV shows have in different countries have regulations on how much commercial time they can show, and this has changed over time, how much commercial time they can include in 30 and 60-minute segments of TV shows on different networks. And I believe I'm trying to bring up the book that I was reading about this, but it's basically history of advertising. And it's talking, I think Canada had stricter rules for this. And so what some innovative ad guy figured out is a loophole, which is it became pretty commonplace. Now everyone sees this where as a TV show ends, and people that are younger watching this might not even know this, but if you watch cable TV, at the end of a movie or TV show, the screen will split and it'll show the end credits for the show, but then it'll start showing kind of the upcoming stuff. So it'll split the screen. So it'll keep showing the credits. And what they figured is that if we're still showing the show or the movie in the credits, now we can show a commercial over here because technically we're still in airing time of the content. And so even
Mm.
things like that, like advertisers figured out, hey, we can actually show an ad over here and still be technically in our window of a lot of ad time because of that. Or they'd figure out that um, if we, I think it was Real Housewives or one of those shows, the producer of it figured out if we uh, start the show with like 10 or 12 minutes of the show before the first commercial break, the chance we get people to actually watch the commercial and stay for the show skyrocket. Instead of doing the typical format, which is I forget how many minutes. It was every few minutes they would do a commercial break. So after the first 3, 5 minutes, commercial. But you wouldn't get people invested enough in the show. So people would just change the channel, wouldn't watch the commercials and flip flop. So like
Wow.
there, there's so much genius, and a lot of it has been used in the marketing industry for things like that. Like, how do we constantly stay one step ahead? Oh, there's a new regulation, new rule, there's a new medium, consumers are getting smarter, they're getting wise to this. I'm going to go do this thing over here. And so when it's really hard to, and this applies to everything, this happened like it's happening right now with AI and jobs. Everyone says all the jobs are going to be gone. And it's happening with advertising. It's like, well, social media is all the privacy changes. It's getting so hard to advertise. And in the moment, because we can't see the future, it always seems like, well, maybe this is the moment where jobs do get replaced. But it's like if you look back in history, every major innovation, revolution, industrial revolution, printing press, the Ford, assembly line for putting car, like all these things put so many people out of business, changed industries, destroyed industries, massive industries where tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people lost their jobs. But like things have continued to progress and new jobs you couldn't even fathom. If you went back 30 years from now, from today in the past, and you told people back then, hey, in 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, most people are going to produce nothing. They're going to be working on their computers and they're going to be typing things into these boxes. And they're going to be using these little boxes to record themselves doing things and putting them online. People are going to watch them and they're going to make money from advertising and they're going to sell things. It's like you can't fathom that. But now that is the number one and number two uh, career aspiration for high schoolers and middle schoolers. They want to be creators and YouTubers and stuff. So it's like it's hard to fathom this stuff because we just don't know what we don't know.
I have a quote. I want your thoughts on it. Culture is speaking to our tribe. Marketing is speaking to other tribes.
I think it's part of it. I think it's I don't think it's wrong. I think it's like it's a factual statement. Um, but I do think that even within your own tribe, marketing can be an effective and needed medium, right? Because you can share the same culture. Like I guess it depends on what your definition of culture is in that sense, right? Because there's a there's subcultures, there's cultures based on religion, there's all kinds of different cultures, and inside cultures, whether it's religions or whether it's your where you grew up, your location, like people don't just buy things because of their culture or do things with the culture. It's like they need to be persuaded beyond that. So I think it's a strong foundation. There's culture elements to be
Well, I'll
used.
add a piece then.
Yeah.
Company culture is speaking to our tribe. Marketing is the reason marketing is speaking to other tribes. I'm thinking marketing is communicating a message or messages to those that could become a part of our tribe. If it's uh, there's a culture between our current customers and our people.
Yep.
There's a there's a relationship already. Is marketing communicating to who could be within relationship with us, or
It
is
can
it
be. I think marketing is a necessity even if somebody is inside your ecosystem. Like people like marketing, selling, these are fundamental things that need to be done, even if somebody's bought from you 10 times. You still might need to continue selling to them. I would say that culture is a really important element of retention once you've gotten somebody into like, so if you're really good at marketing, that's you're able to get people into your ecosystem. And once you're inside your ecosystem, either as an employer, as a customer, or a team member, whatever it might be, then things like culture are really effective at making them sticky and increasing lifetime value, increasing their word of mouth, how much more likely they're going to tell other people about it. If you think about it like uh, my brain goes here a lot when I start thinking religion in terms like this, like think about like a cult, right? And that cults fascinate me because And I'm not just talking like, Jonestown and stuff like that, although I've watched every Jonestown documentary because I think I, as a marketer, I think it's hard to not be deeply fascinated by cult leaders because it is they're evil people, but they are so good at marketing and sell. It's reading reading books about these cult leaders, like their ability to persuade people to abandon their entire lives and families to come. It's fast. That's a whole nother story. We can talk about another episode maybe, but the point of that is like if you build a really strong culture that glues people together, anchors people into this thing, once you get somebody in, they then become your marketing machine for you. So
Mm,
it creates this kind of marketing flywheel where if you can get the momentum going and get some initial people in, and you have this incredible culture, if you have this special thing, and it's not just religious cults, it's Apple. Apple's a cult, right? And Apple's a perfect example of that. Once Apple gets you in their ecosystem, they know, okay, chance, and they I'm sure have all these numbers that once we get somebody to buy an iPhone, the chance that they're going to then buy a Mac, an
mm,
iPad, an Apple Watch, AirPods just goes to the roof. And they just know it's only a matter of time before we get them anchored to this and then this and then this. And then they're going to get their family to do it, which is exactly what happened to me. I got the very first iPhone in 2007. And I remember for a few years, my family still had Blackberries. And then eventually, I think my like dad or sister got an iPhone, and then the next one, and then like eventually everyone had iPhones and then Macs. And then it's like it spreads, right? Um, and so yeah, culture can be fuel for making marketing a lot easier.
mm. What are marketing don'ts?
Uh, that's such a big and such a big like abstract question. Um, uh, there's so many places I could take this. I would say like one that's kind of been on my mind lately. And this is like particularly relevant right now because of how hard it is to command attention and how hard just advertising is in general right now is like don't be lazy and don't be boring. I think there's such an emphasis on spying and wanting to see what the competition does. And I get this from our students all the time. It's like, what tool do you use to do research and what tool do you use to spy? I think there's a very thin line between research and being inspired and just like I want to see what my competition's doing so I can just copy what they're doing. And a majority of people are looking at the latter, which is just like this person seems successful and this is what they're doing. So let's just do what they're doing. And while advertising has never been harder, I think, for a variety of reasons, I also think the bar is so incredibly low for creating a good ad, like the lowest it's ever been. If you go on to Facebook right now, or Instagram right now, or TikTok right now, or YouTube right now, and you just scroll and consciously look at the ads, like actually like look for them, and just look at each ad you see, a vast majority of them are cookie cutter, boring. There's nothing unique. There's nothing special. There's nothing funny, entertaining, educational, valuable. It is Bic pens, writes really good, two for $5. Like it's it's the least amount of effort you could put into creating an ad. And it really comes down to just being lazy and having a total lack of creativity and lack of ability to think outside the box. Um, Also a lack of willing to take risks. I think like a marketing don't, if you want to keep going this list, like don'ts, it's like
Yeah, yeah.
playing it safe, right? There's this tendency I hear a lot. And again, I just have a unique perspective because we run a lot of ads, but I also teach a lot of people and I speak to a lot of people. So I get to just hear from all kinds of different advertisers, small businesses, big businesses, tech companies, e-commerce businesses, service businesses. So many of these business owners are so focused on brand and they're so focused on their identity. And I know for you, like culture is obviously a big thing. And I'm not negating culture in that. This is more like on brand side of things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, brand without culture is just a lie.
Yeah.
So I want
So,
to be
but
clear.
like,
Like
yeah, yeah. So,
I try to focus on what how behaviors actually occur
yeah,
versus how they're projected.
yeah. So it's like,
So I don't take that
my,
personally.
yeah, my viewpoint, and what I'm basically about to say, I just want to make it's a distinction between what you do and what a lot of people think, the way they're thinking about it. Unless you're Nike or Apple or Coca-Cola, your brand means nothing. Like it's people are not going to remember that the ad they saw from you use a different color than your color code, right? Like I can't tell you how many brands we worked with in the past where their ads like, oh, this is using a different like a hue of color, or our logo's not on this, or that doesn't really feel on message. That what that influencer said, and it's like I try to tell these people like, again, most people will see this, will never remember it instantly. They won't even register they saw your ad. And then the other half, the other, not the other half, but the other, few points, 2%, 3% that actually registered it within a few hours will totally forget about it. And then maybe a handful, those single digits, will remember it and they will have clicked and they will have bought. And that's why they remember it. And who cares at that point? They bought from you. And then you can build your identity with them, you build your brand with them on the back end. But it's like this need to be perfect and this need to every ad I run needs to look perfect and needs to be on brand and on message. I think creates a ton of paralysis. It causes advertisers and marketers to move really, really slow, and slow is death. Like in marketing, if you
Mm.
move slow, you're going to lose because the amount of creative you need to output today is so high that if you're only able to put out a few ads a month and each of those ads is like just run through 10 different people and looked at, like you're going to lose, right? Um, and again, once you're at Apple level and Coke level and big brand level, cool. You want to be, like Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens we were going to work with and we didn't because they were so particular about their ads. Like they wouldn't allow certain image ads to run because there was a crease in the packaging on it. And I'm like, that's cool. Like I love AG1. Like I'm a huge AG1 customer. I've been a customer for years. Like good for you guys. You're massive. You can do that now. But it's like, I'm not going to run ads for you because on a performance basis, especially because like we wouldn't be able to move fast enough. It's wouldn't work for us. But like when you're that size, cool. If you want to do that, go for it. But until you get to the size where you're doing 100 million, 500 million plus a year, like break things. Don't be afraid to piss some people off. Don't be afraid that this ad might offend somebody. There's we live in this such a sensitive, fragile culture right now where everybody is so afraid to make a bold statement, even if it's not doesn't in hindsight not even that bold. Of a like, I want to use a joke or humor, but someone will be offended by it. The uh what I would say is like if you're not pissing somebody off, the opposite side's not happening, right? Polarization goes both ways. So if you're pissing people off, it means there's also another group of people that you're being magnetic to, right? It's this polarization. If nobody has any emotional response to your ad, then nobody like if nobody's angered by your ad at all, nobody probably feels positive about it either. So you're speaking down the middle and nobody wins in the middle. That's why politicians continue to go to the extremes, right? Because the middle doesn't move. It's like they want to go further and further here because they know that's how they win the primaries, and then they can speak to the middle at the end, try to pick up middle. Like it's all a game. And what I always say is like every every 4 years we have a competition in our country for the most powerful job on the planet. It's the most competitive competition in history, right? To become president of the United States. And every 4 years, the guy who wins is hated, not just disliked, is hated by tens of millions of Americans, like viscerally hated, regardless of who the politician is, regardless whether it's Trump, Obama, Biden, Bush, go all the way back, right? Nixon, JFK. And so it's like, if you can become president while being hated by tens of millions of people, you can build a really profitable business being disliked by a few people online, a few trolls. Like I think when you look at it from a different perspective of like, well, you can win doing this, win big. Like I could probably win and take a few risks, swing the bat a little
Mm.
bit. But it's the lack of taking risks is a big problem.
I have don't move slow and don't stay in the middle. don't be lazy, and
Don't be lazy. Don't say in the middle. I would say, I mean, maybe not. It's not so much don't say in the middle, but it's don't be afraid to create. It's not about like I need to have my entire business identity built to being polarizing, but like don't be afraid to create an ad or an angle that is edgy or put humor in it. Like you need to be willing to test things because you may find that your brand and your product just resonates with it's a serious product that targets a serious customer and humor doesn't work. But you need to be able to test that to know. Like you'll never know until you know. Because what you may find is like maybe you're in a boring industry, you're in insurance, right? Something like that. You're in the medical field, you're in the legal field. And everybody has the exact same assumption that my customer is serious. Therefore, I can't test humor or any other angles.
mm,
But guess what? One day somebody wakes up and says, I'm going to try it. And guess what? There might be a lot of people out there who love that. And now you have this massive pocket over here that nobody competes in. And that happens all the time with platforms. Like over the last decade, being early to Facebook and then being early to TikTok and being kind of early to different ad platforms, I've heard the same conversation repeatedly, which is my customer isn't on Facebook. My customer isn't on TikTok. My industry isn't here. Facebook's for kids. I used to hear that, which is crazy in hindsight, but like back in early Facebook, a lot of B2B businesses, different types of businesses were saying my customer's not there. My industry is not there. They're on LinkedIn. And then TikTok's been the same thing the last few years. And every time there's a few people in the industry that take a risk, get on there and make a killing, right? There's a guy on TikTok that's been on there for years called Law by Mike. He's a lawyer and has built a massive following. He's, a lawyer who does these incredibly entertaining videos about a really boring thing, law. But he's like, I bet you that there's a lot of people who are so interested in law, but want to be told things in interesting ways. They're going to need lawyers, but they don't want to work with a stiffy, boring lawyer in a old one of those wooden, wood paneling offices, stodgy with cigar smoke. Like they don't want to work with that lawyer. They want to work with a cool, hip lawyer that, tells interesting stories and stuff that like looks good. Like,
mm.
and that guy he has, millions and millions and millions of followers, is fabulously wealthy because he did what no other lawyer was doing, which is I'm going to get on this platform that's blowing up while everyone else assumes that no people are going to work with lawyers there. And it pays dividends. Risk, like taking risks can go one of two ways. You can lose or you can win. But like not taking risks, there's no, there's no other option, right? It's like if I take a risk and take a chance, there's two things that can happen. If I don't do it, there's one thing that can happen, which was I'll continue getting the same result I've been getting.
Mm.
And so if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, a marketer, like if you're not willing to take risks, you can't do this. This is not for you, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. You can go work a 9 to 5. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. You can live a happy, fulfilled life working a job where you don't have to take risks. You can come in, you do what you're told to do. Here's your tasks. You check out at 5 p.m. You have a weekend. You have a family. Like, great. But if you're going to do this, like if you're going to
Mm.
run a business, if you're going to try to do something big, you can't be afraid to take risks. You can't be afraid to fail. You can't be afraid for people to not like you. You can't be afraid to get a negative comment. You'll never make it. There's a 0% chance you'll make it if that's the way you think.
You mentioned like so TikTok. There is advantage in not finishing the story. YouTube, that's where that whole story could be absorbed. What about this medium that we're on? What are we doing? Why are we doing it?
Yeah,
Who
podcasting's fascinating.
I really want to understand this because I enjoy it and I want to do
I
more.
love, yeah. Yeah. I absolutely
And
love podcasting.
but I don't
It's
want
a
to
great
sell
medium.
out,
Yeah.
whatever that even means. So I want to unpack this a little bit using your marketing, your let's not talk about marketing, the medium, your your hundreds and thousands of hours of studying the human behavior, right? What are we
Yeah.
doing here?
I think what's happened with podcasting, and again, I could be wrong about this. The way I'm interpreting this and the way I'm coming to this decision is based on success stories, like who's been most successful over the last few years in this medium and who's really growing and what are they doing. Um, and what I've seen is whether it's Rogan or Lex Friedman or Huberman or Shapiro is a there was this massive pent up need by most human beings for raw, just completely, whether you disagree with or agree with it, just unbiased, like not like unbiased might be the wrong word because all people have biases, but like not like owned by advertisers, like genuine beliefs. So like when humans say something, when these guys say these things, they genuinely believe them. It's not somebody else in their ear, a producer. So like raw, real, authentic discussions about topics and material that I think for a very long time, Hollywood and the people on Madison Avenue and like assume that the average American or average person around the world doesn't want to hear about, right? Nobody wants to hear a 2 hour unedited discussion on neuroscience, like Andrew Huberman. Like, who could have fathomed that a guy like Andrew Huberman, who's one of the smartest human beings in the world, talks about neuroscience, like doesn't dumb it down at all. Super complex scientific terms for hours. Lex Friedman, one of the smartest guys in the world, talks about these really deep technical topics for hours, hour long, multiple hour long episodes. Joe Rogan talks to, there's no theme to the show. Every episode, one episode can be talking to a military historian, the next can be talking to an MMA fighter, and the next can be talking to a stand up comic. And I think podcasts have unlocked this, like it's given uh the ability for what humans truly want to hear and listen to and consume. It's given that an outlet, and it's allowed people to create for that. And the challenging thing and the cool thing about it is that I don't think there's like a formula, right? Because there's simultaneously people like Rogan who do 3 hour, like he does his Protect Our Parks series with his buddies, Shane Gillis and Ari Shafir, right? And Mark Norman, like three of his best friends. And like their last one, they went for 7 hours, I think. So like it's just 7 hours of them as best friends getting drunk, talking shit, talking everything. But then there's like a American History Daily, which I also love, which is like 15-minute clips every day about that day in history. So, today is
Wow.
April 14th. So today's episode is today, April 14th in history. It might be something that happened in 1211. And that's like a bite-sized piece of history. And I also love that. So it's not like it's universally long form or short form or this thing. I think it's just this, like all this content's being created is just so it's original, it's raw, it's not being manipulated by massive staffs and producers. It's not being like, hey, we need to pull this guest last minute because they came on and said this thing. It's like one of the it's pure forms of content creation and content consumption, conversely, because you're on the other side of it, if you're consuming it. Um, and it's given everyone a voice uh, in a way that's a little cleaner to hear than like social media feeds where it's just so busy. It allows you to kind of share a voice in just a more open format that's less like I need to cram this really important message for virality's sake. Like I need to say it with this hook and do this thing. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know where it goes. Like it's not new either. I think about podcasting, what's cool is like it's been around for a bit. Rogan's been doing his show since like the late 2000s. Um,
Wow.
if you listen to his early episodes, like it's the quality is so awful, but it's like he was doing it early, early, early. It's been around for, like 20 years at this point. It's crazy. Um, so yeah, I don't know where it goes, but I know it's going to continue to grow. Like there's no way it doesn't continue to get bigger and bigger.
What you mentioned being on them as, it's, the word eludes me. It was like almost disgusting or just not exhausting or not
Yeah, it's
enjoyable.
exhausting is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, what makes that so? What can
Yeah. So there's um I think two things that I've noticed, at least from me being a guest on podcast. One is the like boxing a guest in terms of this is all I care to hear from them about is this specific topic on this specific thing. And I have, these questions for them. I think that's a really big one. The reason I like your show and chatting with you is because sure, if you want to talk just about market, if like we could technically talk about marketing for the whole thing, but it would be an interesting conversation. It'd weave in and out different things. But like you're not forcing the conversation. You're not saying, hey, I'm going to keep driving questions on the specific topic and not allowing it to deviate. You're letting the conversation flow organically. And people can sense that. And guests like that. They don't like being like, hey, I'm in this role. I'm talking this cool thing that really interests me. Well, stop talking this thing. Let's get back to this thing. Right. Obviously, you need to have guardrails. Your job is to make sure like you don't let somebody go on and on about something boring. Like when somebody's like even me, I can go on and on and on. And so like it's also good for people to tell me, hey, like let's come back here because I can go down this path and maybe I think it's interesting, but like my audience probably is tuning out right now. So that's the give and take there. Um, the other thing that always drove me insane was when podcast hosts wouldn't do their homework and would ask the same questions. And so
Oh,
that goes back to like, well, if you're going to have a podcast and you're going to put the effort in, like, and you get this guest on your show, I want to hear something different from them. Why would I ask the same questions they got asked on 17 of their shows? Why would somebody come and watch my show? Why would they watch my episode? If they can just watch it on their show, there's nothing unique about this interview. And so, like, the best podcasters are able to get uh, you know, celebrities to share stories they never shared before. They're able to get this crazy insight. They're able to get this, this hot take on something. They're able to hear something that's never been shared before. And that's got to be the whole point. Like otherwise, why do it? Right? Like why it's got to be, I guess, come down to like, why are you doing it in the first place? Are you doing it because you're like Joe Rogan and you genuinely want to have these conversations? Like I truly and wholeheartedly believe that the reason Joe does his show is first for him. It's like genuinely for him first, meaning he wants to talk to this person and learn from them and ask them questions. The
hmm.
byproduct of that is that lots of other people also have the same curiosity as him and want to watch. And it creates these really good conversations because you can sense that he is genuinely interested and his guests can sense that, which make them really excited. And it creates these amazing conversations. And like that is truly special. And I believe, you know, Lex Free, I believe a lot of those guys are the same way. They're doing it first for them. And the byproduct of that is that it gets to be shared with a large audience. But if you're doing it the other way, which is like, I'm only doing this because this is a tool for me to make money. Like everyone creates podcasts. I want to create a podcast so I can make money. Then you're going to take the easiest path. You're going to look for shortcuts. You're going to look for cheat codes. You're going to look for hacks. You're going to press easy button whenever you can. And ironically, those are the podcasts that don't work.
Man, I can't agree anymore. And I started to really loathe going on them myself. And not and and that led to do more of these, right? Just be the host. What's
Yeah.
what would you say is some of the big lessons for 2024? I know we're in we just started, but what's some of the big lessons?
You want to put like a little more like in what vein, in what personal life, professional life, marketing, business, like
Personal.
personal. That's why I love our conversations because most people would say marketing like what are your three biggest marketing tips for 2024? That's like a cookie cutter question most people ask.
Uh,
So I'm actually glad you didn't ask
that
that,
well, that leads me to even another question about like
which is marketing tips.
no, 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 but like before you answer the personal lesson is like, is that you think could that be some of the diminishing returns of being one of the top in one's field? It starts like the general bias or the it starts to almost eat on the person. Like, I mean, this is a totally, like, if that's your experience, right? As a pundit, as a person of there are people that truly admire your work, and so maybe they genuinely really want to know those questions. But like as the receiver of those questions, it's like, hey, I'm also this person over here, and this person over here, and this person over here. I have all these other aspects to what I care about and who I am. Could that just be
It's a
an
self-fulfilling prophecy.
unfortunate symptom of
It's
hyper
100% a symptom.
success in one vertical?
Yeah, it's 100% self-inflicted because the easiest way to build success is to uh, niche down, focus on a specific thing, and get really, really good at that thing and become known for that thing. It is way easier to become known as the best guy for, TikTok ads guy for local businesses than it is to become the best guy at business. It's such a broader, you're competing in such a bigger field. And so you start by, you focus on this thing, you become big at that thing, well known at the thing. And then if you're good enough and lucky enough, then you kind of leapfrog to the next thing. Right. So it's like you look guys like Russell, who's like, really started in the internet marketing world. And then it was, funnels, but then it became like just marketing in general and then business in general. And he's become a very big person who's well known, not just as a marketer, but as a entrepreneur, as a person, right? Hormozi is the same kind of thing, right? It's like was amazing entrepreneur building gym businesses in the ClickFunnels community, the funnel hacking community, but then transcended that. So it's a you kind of need to do that way. But the challenge is you can get stuck and trapped there, and then it becomes a thing where it's like, and I dealt with that uh, on a consistent basis. I dealt with it as being like a Facebook ad guy for a while, and then it became now it's TikTok ad guy, and you put yourself in that box where because you're known as a TikTok ad guy, inherently everyone wants to ask you questions about TikTok because they, even if they're not lazy, they might not be lazy. They just genuinely are curious, like you said. It's like, hey, I have a chance. Like, I'm not comparing myself to this person, by the way, at all. I realize this can come off this way. But like, if I had a chance to sit down with Warren Buffett, of course, I'm going to ask him about investing advice. Like, it's Warren Buffett. And I'm sure he's heard, he's gotten asked. I'm sure Warren Buffett has
That's
been
kind of what
asked,
I was asking.
what's your biggest tip for investing? I'm sure that's the one question been asked more than anything in history. And he gets asked it all the time. And I'm sure he just realizes, like, well, of course, I'm Warren Buffett. People are going to ask me that question because I'm the just legend of investing, right? And Elon, like certain people are probably asked very similar questions. What's Elon Musk? It's like, what's your number one tip for a new entrepreneur? Like, I'm sure he gets asked that question all the time, and it just comes with the territory. If you're really well known for a specific thing, you're inherently going to attract similar questions. Um, and it's like, I guess one thing I'll say, and then I'll pause is like, it's similar to the like celebrity picture challenge, meaning it's like most people, if you see a celebrity, like an average celebrity, right? Most people are like, I'm not getting, they're at dinner with their family. I'm not going to interrupt them, right? That's most people are not going to do it. But when you get to such a level of fame, you're Joe Rogan, you're Taylor Swift, but most people all of a sudden flip and think, oh my God, it's Joe Rogan. I will never get a chance to see this person again. He's the biggest person in the world, or Taylor
Mhm.
Swift. I know I shouldn't do this, but it's Taylor Swift. I got to do it. So there's like a certain level that when you get to that level, like the rules just change. People maybe know they shouldn't ask this thing or do this thing, but they know it's like their chance to do it and they'd rather do it. And like the problem though is that that happens every single day to that person, to Rogan. Everywhere he goes, he's that person for so many people. And it's a real problem. I don't know. It's a real
What could be the
problem.
consequences? Right? That's where it's what is there anything real in fame outside of the transcendent lessons?
Yeah, I mean, it's a I
Just
don't
because when
envy
you
it.
mentioned the thing about Buffett, I
Yeah.
thought a Kahneman would probably tell us if you want the answer to the investing, don't ask anything about investing.
Yes.
Like I was thinking of Kahneman when you said that. It's like you go up
He would
to
definitely think about that way.
Michael Jordan, don't talk about basketball. Ask
No.
him something else that you'd be
Yeah.
curious about.
Because what makes like a Buffett such a legendary investor isn't necessarily the maybe the technicals of how he invests. It's not like it's not a single technical thing that he does. It's a way that he views the world. It's like who he is as a because like everyone knows the trades he makes. Like by now, people have dissected everything he's ever done, and from a technical perspective, it could probably be replicated. But there's something about the way Buffett thinks and the deals he does and how he does, like the way his brain works. Same with Michael Jordan. It's like he could tell you, here's how I trained. Here's my training regimen every day. I did this, this, and this. You'll never be Michael Jordan. You could do the exact same thing. There's this like, there's something deeper about these people. And yeah, it's what you said. I agree. It's like if you really wanted to get value from a meeting with one of these people, it would be to not talk about the thing everyone talks about for two reasons. One is I think you probably won't get the value you want from that question. And two, that's going to open that person up because they're going to be so happy you're asking about something else. And in that conversation dialogue, they're going to share some gems. They might share something with you never shared before because you asked them a question they've never been asked before. Right. It's like if Buffett, if asking Buffett what the best advice, investment advice you could give would is, and he gave the right answer, we'd all know what it is. Like it'd be online, right? It's like, well, Buffett gave me this answer, and I told everyone with it, right? So it's obviously not a $1 billion answer, but there might be a question that he hasn't been asked before that somebody asked it and he got that lesson. It
Mm.
could change their life. Um, he just hasn't been asked the right question, and that's a really tough thing. It's like there's a real art and science to asking questions.
Would you go to the? Have you been to the shareholder meeting?
I haven't. I've wanted to. It's it looks like an amazing thing. And there's, only a few, I mean, there's very limited time left to actually go to one with Buffett there.
Well, he has mentioned he plans on being the oldest man who ever lived. So
He
you
has the
we might have
resources.
some time. I hope. We did lose Charlie at
Yep.
99 years and 99 months last year on November 28th. Um, are you going this year?
Uh maybe. Maybe we can go together.
I'd love to see you there.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Um, how long have you been studying Buffett?
I don't necessarily I wouldn't say it's like a studying as much as I've gone through periods where I've been interested uh like deeply in investing, and then I've gone through periods where I haven't. I've kind of gone through this inner, and this has nothing to do with marketing either, but like um this inner fight of like when I was younger, I really wanted to do investing. Like a lot of my friends went and worked on Wall Street. Like my initial path was going to be
Wow,
um either like investment banking or management consulting. Those are kind of the two paths that I was really thinking about in college
you'd
before
be
entrepreneurship.
super crazy good at both of those for sure.
I would have loved it. It totally different life would have changed everything. But like some of like my best friends from high school and college, like that's the path they took. And one of my, good friends, is a wealth manager at Chase for, massive, family offices and stuff, and just lives the life. Like that's a crazy business because they basically can build these large books of business and they get recruited to the next bank and they get basically bonused every time they bring the book of business over, like a huge percent. They make a ton of money. It's pretty crazy. And he spends a lot of his days golfing and shit like that. Um, but what I realized like is like that's all he does all day long. And that's all a lot of people do all day long. And they have the fanciest tech and the most resources and tools and research. And they lose a lot of time. They make the wrong investments a lot of times, right? And so I was like, I'm not gonna, the chances of me beating the market in the long run are pretty slim. So it's like, is it worth the effort to spend a lot of time doing this thing if the end result's basically going to be the same? Or does it make more sense to just focus all my time and attention on generating income and wealth and letting somebody else do it entirely? And,
Mm.
occasionally I can play around with stuff, but it's like the last few years I've been more in that camp where I've definitely been uh, more hands off because I also have for how much I study Buffett, like have studied Buffett and understand like why he did certain things and his career and his philosophy on things. This also goes back to your very first point of the discussion around the how you're framing 80/20, how you're positioning something. You can know all the stuff, but if you can't control your dopamine, if you can't control your inner emotions, it doesn't matter. And so for me, like I've made a lot of stupid investment decisions because of that. Like trading is one of the highest dopaminergic activities, right? It's like
Yes.
you make decisions that are not the right decision based purely on emotion instead of logic instead of fact. And that is for most people investing, even talented people, even some really smart people. Actually, the people who do the worst with their investing are the smartest people. So they've done studies on this. Doctors, lawyers,
Yep.
basically like highly educated professions, those people manage their money the worst by far. And there's overconfidence. There's all these variables that go into it,
Mm.
right? Most people that are type A, uh, entrepreneurial people, business owners, like high income people, they are highly dopaminergic people, meaning they're driven highly by dopamine. They've just figured out for the profession how to channel that dopamine. But they don't have the same skills yet for other things, other areas of their life. So if you then go into this thing over here and you haven't figured out how to manage that dopamine burst that controls everything, you can make a lot of stupid decisions because of that short-term need to do something and act and you know, ooh, this uh I'm gonna buy these calls because I got this inside scoop that the earnings call is gonna be big and this new thing they launched, I'm confident. So I'm gonna buy these calls, or I'm gonna, short sell it, or do this thing. And it's like it's
I
such
think
a
you
roller
make a
coaster of
brilliant
emotions.
point here. I want your thoughts on this. The behavioral phenomenon that would make the operator super powerful to like put all the chips on the table because they're in control of the medium to get that outcome. That would be really good for the entrepreneur. Like, here's all the leverage. Here's my credit card. But I'm in control. I can make that sale and increase the growth of the company. I would speculate that that is the opposite of what has to happen if I'm out of control of the equity, which is the market.
Yes.
You choose. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like for
Yeah.
the
I agree.
operator, for the entrepreneur, following that emotional speculation, that intuition, that's gotten them such good rewards because they're in control of the conversation or the follow up or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the farther that we are away from the control, that intuition, emotion, it's just a fugazi.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, that's a very common cognitive bias, the assumption that because you're good at one thing, you're good at another thing. Yeah, that's a problem with people that are successful. You could be the best sales guy in the world, the best doctor, you could be the best surgeon in the world. You could literally be a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist, and you could be the fucking worst investor in history, right? But you have confidence. You have the confidence. Like I'm a rocket scientist. I'm a brain surgeon. I know the markets better than these guys that
Mm.
on Wall Street. You don't, right?
Where did your interest come up to, and when thinking of management consulting in high school?
Started in high school, and then really the first 2 years in college got more interested in it. I worked on some projects. Some like when I went to Babson, there were some really cool uh, management consulting type classes where there was a lot of really great kind of case study work you could do, real world experiments, working with real world businesses, as you would if you worked at a Bain or McKinsey or any of these firms. And it was very fascinating to me. And what I loved about it, it's very, to me, like, was similar to entrepreneurship.
You might be the only person on the show that even has a guest that even knows what Bain is,
Uh,
other than those I've told.
everyone should know what Bain is. They control a lot of our economy. Um, that thing is a lot of people don't understand, like BlackRock, a lot of these companies that, like, that's a whole nother conversation. They own everything.
We'll have to do an episode just on that.
Yeah, they own everything. But so for me, it was like this really cool career path where you literally, let me back up. The one thing that I loved about entrepreneurship was it's not boring. It's never boring, right? This idea of like a 9 to 5 where you work at the same company, the same thing for years and decades. Just like I couldn't fathom that. Um, but I just hadn't found that entrepreneurial thing yet. So for me, management consulting was interesting because you literally get to go on site with different companies for these different periods of time and help them solve challenges and problems and grow and then go and do something else. And like that was really, it's a really cool concept. It's has a lot of down, like there's a lot of negatives to it. You're constantly kind of traveling, you're on the road, you don't have a home base. But like when you're a younger person, it's like, this is cool. I get to go here for 6 months, a year, 2 years, work at this company, go work at Comcast for a year and on this division, this new project. And it's about as entrepreneurial as you could get without being an entrepreneur and having kind of the safety net and also the high income potential. Obviously, if you become a partner at any of these companies, you make a lot of money.
What? Yeah. What were they trying to per? What were they saying? What were they saying that the? What were they promoting? Like, oh, you could get here, and you could. I'm curious what the pay structures were that they were, trying to proselytize
Honestly, it's
young,
been
brilliant
yeah, I mean
minds that,
it's
you know,
we're talking like 14 years now. I know that it was a very quick path to 6 figures a year, which at the time being, coming to
it's
college and
huge.
stuff was like that was huge. Because if you look at the other side of it, it's like going to work in a marketing agency, you're talking, 30,000 a year, 40,000 a year at any of those agencies. So management consulting, investment banking, those are careers where you can really quickly break 100K a year salary, um, which at the time, again, was, it's
Mm.
100K means a lot more back then than it does today. But even today, it's still, still great. But then there's a path to, you know, partner level and, you're talking 7 figures, you're making millions of dollars a year. So there was this, significant path to building, a very good life in that.
Do you remember the moment when you decided that's not it, and I'm going to do this startup? Because it was Loop
Yeah,
first, right?
yeah. Um, I mean, it was just a phone. My business partner at the time, before business partners, Nick had, called me out of the blue, and we hadn't spoken in 2 years. Said, and I was literally, it was spring semester was ending. I was getting ready to do an internship potentially that summer, and that was going to be like the path. Like if I did that internship, I would have went down that path. Said, hey, I had this. I know we used to, spend late nights talking business ideas for freshman year in college all the time. Like we would spend hours and hours just talking about what if we did this, that we had this, like all these ideas, right? And he's like, I have this idea, and I thought of you, like you want to do it. And I took like a few hours, and I was like, yeah, I want to do it, and was sold. And at the end of the day, the business didn't work out, but it was a 2 year crash course in entrepreneurship. And yeah, I mean that once I started on the path, there was never like since that day, there's never been a serious moment where I've been like, I don't want to do anything else. It would have been an easy choice. There were a lot of moments where the probably the smart choice and the easy choice would have been like, I need to throw in the towel here. I need to start making money and like go do this thing, get a real job. But like I think anybody that's been an entrepreneur would tell you that once you start, especially if you start young, it's almost impossible to do
Mm.
anything else. Like I would rather like have no income and have to just figure out how to scrape by for years than not have that freedom. Like it's so important to me having freedom and making my own decisions and having my own destiny in my hands. Like knowing that if I fail, it's because of me. It's not that one day I wake up and I'm one of 10,000 people at Google and I got fired and now I don't have a job. Like it's yeah, I
Right.
couldn't fathom anything else.
Do you think you've monetized what you learned in those 2 years up to this point? Like the lessons you've been able, even though the business didn't work out, you think you've been able to monetize the lessons
Yeah, I mean,
in one way or
I've
another?
definitely I've monetized them. I don't know if I guess the question is like from an ROI perspective, if like that had been successful, do you think I've made the same amount of money and generated the same amount if I had done back then? Like I don't know that,
I'm not
but I do
asking
know
that.
that yeah, but yeah, I do know that I monetized it. I know my friend and former business partner Nick has definitely monetized it. We went different paths. He went and stayed in kind of more of the tech start like Silicon Valley world. I went into this marketing world, and he founded a company called MaintainX that has absolutely taken off the last few years. They raised their, I think, Series C round or Series D round. They raised $60 million at $1 billion valuation. So that company will likely go public for multiple billions of dollars or sell. So he'll be close to a billionaire. And so, like, you know, I wish that was our company. I wish that was the first one we started. He'll have a little bit of head start on me there financially, but but it makes me really happy because I know like we both failed there, but we both,
Wow.
have done amazing things since then, and I'll catch up at some point. And give me a few more years, and I'll catch up there. But it's like that brings me a lot of joy and makes me think that like what we did was worth it. Like
Hmm.
it paid dividends. It wasn't just like one of us went on to do something great. It's like both of us, we failed there, we learned stuff, and then we went on to to continue doing what we wanted to do, but do it more successfully.
In wrapping this up, I want to know that, yeah, what's the lesson so far personally 2024?
Personally, it's like a balancing. It's a personal professional thing where it's really for me, it's been getting comfortable doing less, but like not like less in the sense of less hands-on, because I've started to have to figure out where's my true value as a person, as a marketer, as a business owner, as a business partner. And that's changed over the years, especially as our team has grown. I mean, we have almost 30 employees now at Unicorn across the two companies. And we have with, Hero Brands, we have, I don't know, 14 or something like that. We have a lot of contractors. Um, and so like my value is less about day to day pressing buttons and running ads. And it's certainly not running the team and managing people because I'm not good at that. And that's not a competency of mine. So it's now become more being the face of the business, speaking at events, creating content. And so I've had to like try uh to figure that out personally and professionally of like because it's just different. I'm I don't do as well without things to do
Hmm.
because I get distracted easily and I have a hard time kind of staying on task if it's not really like, hey, I'm running this ad account, this ad account, this ad, like doing those things. And so that's been a struggle. It's a good struggle. It's a good problem to have. Um, but it's been a struggle. And then it's trying to balance that with family time and making sure I'm showing up there. And that has been like uh, a whole nother thing, right? So again, just it's like it's a transformational period for me personally, professionally, trying to figure out really this year like how to do that best because it's just like you know Quinn's 3, like it's this age, it's he's changing so fast, he's growing up so fast. Me spending more time with him is more valuable. He's going to be in the next year or two starting to do more of like social activities, school and sports and all these things. And I want to be a better husband. I want to be all like, I'm going to be better at all these things. And they're all changing so fast. Same with business. And so for me this year, it's really about like adapting and focusing on activities that truly are like massive needle moving activities, and anything that isn't, getting out of it completely. Um, because I've been playing a little too small. And something Jeremy and I um, talk about on a regular basis is like, and Tom Shipley, who's a friend of ours and kind of mentor, he's an incredibly successful guy, shared this with me about a year ago. He said, you know, you and Jeremy are A players playing a B game. And that's stuck with me for over a year. And it's so true. It's like we have, and we've done well. Don't think it's like I'm very grateful for what I have and what I've done, but it's like we should be doing significantly more. Right? Like my buddy Nick, it's like there, it's a a multi-billion-dollar company. It's like why aren't we doing that? Right? Nothing wrong with businesses a few million dollars a year. This one does a few million dollars a year. This one does a few million dollars a year. Hero Brands will do maybe 30 million this year, but like we should be building $100 million businesses, billion-dollar companies. And so for me, it's really this year is like a adapting year, and it's also just a realignment and focusing on like, well, what is the next, you know, I'm 35 now. What's the next 5 years look like? When I'm 40, where am I going to be? And what am I going to attain personally, professionally? So it's a big,
Mm.
a big year for that.
Man, I like the ending because there are people listening to this that probably think they hold themselves to a high standard, and then they listen to that because and I, what a great way to end.
Save the best
Like
for last.
you're a beast. Yeah, it's like hell yeah, Max. Thanks for coming back. I can't wait till part three.
Of course, man.
If you're listening to this podcast, please follow Max, man. Re-listen to this episode. Check out episode 220. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Thank you, brother.
Bye, guys. Good to see you.